Good afternoon, everyone. You're very welcome to today's live webinar on LinkedIn's new product, Sales Insights. We have an exciting session planned for you, where we will demonstrate how you can use LinkedIn's firmographic data to define or redefine your go-to-market strategy. Appreciate that some of us are still joining, but what we're going to do is we're going to drop a short two-question poll into the chat box. You can answer that at your convenience. If you wouldn't mind just taking a second to share your feedback, it just gives a better idea of who we have on the call today. Unfortunately, it's not a fun Kahoot quiz. Maybe later or on the next call. Just while you're doing that, I'll just point out some housekeeping items. Although I'm pretty sure that most of us are experts at Zoom calls at this point in time. Just to mention, they'll be on mute and your cameras are turned off. We do this as we're recording the session, so none of your information, your images will be part of the recording when we make it available at a later date. If you're having any issues, we recommend using Adobe Flash Player and logging in through a Google Chrome or Firefox. And as Jamie mentioned there, participation and questions are strongly encouraged, so please feel free to add them in the Q&A box below, and we'll endeavour to answer them in the Q&A session at the end. So we have a very exciting lineup for you today, and I'm not just saying that, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from each of today's presenters. Firstly, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Barbour Lynch. I'm a Senior Relationship Manager at LinkedIn, and I partner with our Sales Navigator and now our LSI customers in the UKI market. I'm going to take a few minutes at the start to share a high-level overview into some of the factors in the market that motivated LinkedIn to launch LSI, as well as provide some insights on what is possible when using LSI as part of your go-to-market planning, philosophy, and strategy. I'll then pass over to my colleague, Jamie Barbour, who's a LSI sales consultant working with our clients in the UKI market. Jamie will deliver a live demonstration of the platform so that you can get a feel for the intuitive user experience, as well as demonstrating the workflow when using LSI to efficiently identify your total addressable market, both from a bottom-up and a top-down perspective. Jamie will also share some insights on how we can leverage this data to enrich existing data sets that you're already using, and how LSI integrates with your sales tools, such as your CRM and Sales Navigator. I'm personally delighted that we are joined on this call by one of our current UK-based LSI customers, Kallidus, and Don Macias, who heads up their sales and marketing operations. We'll be chatting with my colleague, Martin Brennan, about their hands-on experience of LSI to date and what made LSI the right choice for Kallidus. I'm really looking forward to hearing a bit more from Don and Martin a bit later on. And lastly, as we said, we are holding time at the end for Q&A, so please feel free to add questions throughout the presentation. So since we launched the LSI platform back in mid-March, and I've been speaking with my customers, two questions have almost been asked in equal measure. Why LinkedIn launched LSI and what took so long? So it's only through my discussions and feedback with my clients around the challenges to identify reliable third-party data that I've come to appreciate how challenging a task it is to create an effective and accurate sales plan. One of my customers shared that it can be kind of like trying to assemble IKEA furniture with the middle pages of the instructions missing. In effect, the process should be quite manageable, but can become unclear and disconcerting when you feel that their piece is missing. These conversations have been crystallized for me how important accurate data really is for organizations to mitigate challenges and risks and achieve their objectives. So I have a deeper understanding now of the unique value of the LinkedIn platform. And until now, we have been unable to really leverage the full value of LinkedIn in a simple, efficient, and meaningful way. LinkedIn is arguably the richest firmographic data set available. We currently have over 756 million members, and over 55 million companies across 200 countries. Add to this the phenomenal growth of the platform. On average, a new member signs up to LinkedIn every 3 seconds. It becomes quite clear that our network is people-powered and that our data is available, is first-hand, and it gets updated as and when it happens. So previously, this data was only available to our leadership team in LinkedIn, but now through LSI, we're making this data available to you. So that's a bit about why LinkedIn has created the LSI platform. But naturally, we also listened to the market, and more importantly, what our customers were telling us about their challenges with accurate planning, prioritization, and book building for their sales teams. So we've been listening to what's top of mind for sales and marketing leaders for some time, and we conducted a report back in 2019, and this highlighted the lack of confidence in external data and how that can impact territory planning, account prioritization, and the timely identification of growth opportunities. More recently, LinkedIn partnered with a research company called Nielsen, and last October, we produced a report into the state of sales operations and planning, where they interviewed over 500 sales leaders from organizations based in the US. And this report gave great insight into how there's a kind of a paradigm shift in how sales organizations are refocusing their time around sales planning. So essentially, we're going to be seeing organizations investing a lot more time and resources to ensure they develop more reliable, robust plans moving forward. The results of this survey also showed that organizations are keenly interested in insight tools and platforms that will support the accuracy and cadence of their planning process. So while we see organizations are going to be planning more regularly, we also see that they would like tools that will support optimizing and streamlining their planning process so that forecasting can be adjusted more accurately and up to date. Before I hand over to my colleague Jamie, who will illustrate how LSI has streamlined the planning process in greater detail, as a bit of pretext, the LSI platform provides you with a full funnel view into strategic growth accounts by showcasing your ideal customer profile per region, per account. This will help with account prioritization and future headcount planning. We integrate with your existing sales and planning workflow, as LSI data can be layered with your existing data in CRM to ensure that your data is always up to date. This is evolution and not revolution, and it will improve your planning efficiency and cut down on time. We use sophisticated algorithms to guide you to the biggest opportunities for growth and surface white space opportunities that you may not have yet even realized. As I mentioned before, LSI integrates with Sales Navigator. So pre-prepared account lists from LSI can be transferred directly to your sales reps to action and prospect into. Additionally, as part of the full funnel view, we can look at the relationship strength by the number of Sales Navigator actions per account, so that sales and marketing can prioritize lower activity accounts more actively with sales and marketing outreach. So now I'm going to hand over to Jamie, who's going to take us through a live demonstration of the LSI platform.
Excellent, thank you, Doug. You might pass me back host, and we can continue then. Okay, excellent, gentlemen, thank you. So good afternoon, everybody. What we will go through now in this portion is a live drive in LinkedIn Sales Insights. Some or many of you may have actually seen the product already, and if so, we may be taking a slight step back in some respects if you've watched videos, if you've seen some of our demos already. So I want to give everyone on the call a view from start to finish of LinkedIn Sales Insights. But before we do that, we would just launch our poll here. So we have a poll in place at the moment, and we'd just like to get a sense of what type of functions you all sit in. So it's sales, marketing, CRM, etc. I can see people already voting on that. It's fantastic. Thank you for letting us know what our audience looks like. And there's a second question there just around your cadence of organization planning with your leadership. So we'll give that a couple more seconds. And looks like we have a lot of salespeople. They're quick fire fingers, some sales ops, sales support, quite a lot of marketing, some other, so that's interesting. And I can see that There are a lot of people saying they do quarterly planning, a lot of people saying ongoing, which actually makes sense. Static planning that doesn't change over time is probably not great planning. We know things change, if this last year has been anything to go by. So that's fantastic. We've nearly everyone has voted. So thank you so much just for giving us a sense of who's on the call today. So I will share my screen and we'll get started. And do feel free to put in questions on the chat or with the Q&A. And what I'll do is I'll cover those with Doug and Martin at the end of my portion. So let's jump into LSI. And I'll move my picture over there. Hopefully I'll get that out of the way. Okay, so this is the user interface for Sales Insights. Two things just to start. So what we're trying to aim for here with LSI is smarter sales planning with the foundation of data from LinkedIn. So the data from LinkedIn that Doug mentioned, the 750 million plus people, the 55 million plus companies across 200 countries, we see that as being self-sourced from people like yourselves. You go into LinkedIn, you update your profile, and what we're doing is we're now looking at that from a planning perspective. One of the things that we hear from a lot of our customers is the need for reliable data. And that's for them to be effective in their go-to-market. Now, if that is not there, the impact that has on their business is typically salespeople not hitting targets. Sales operations then take the brunt of that because they're not perceived as strategic thought partners for sales. And if any of you have been in my position before as a seller, as a salesperson, it's very easy for salespeople to say, oh, there's something wrong with my book of business or my account set or my territory. We've all been there. We've all done that. And for anyone that call in leadership, I'm sure the biggest challenge you have when you speak to your sales teams when it comes to planning is them trusting the reliability of the data that they're given in their book of business, in the go-to-market, in their territories, etc. So at LSI, we're trying to assist you in creating that reliable data foundation that you can build your strategy, your go-to-market on. We want to help you focus your sales teams on the right accounts. And we also want to help you at a broad view identify and size opportunity within your total addressable market. So the type of insights that we're going to show you will be people-powered data. So you can take real-time view of your accounts and your market sizing. We also want to be able to help you understand your relationship strength that the sales people have using some of these data and insights. So for any of you that are Sales Navigator customers, we'll be able to cross-populate LSI information and Sales Navigator information and give you that richer view of, this is my opportunity I see in LSI, and this is how my sales team are engaging with those companies and people already. Or maybe the answer is they're not engaging, and that again is an opportunity. And then we'll also look at the fact that we want to make sure that the data flows to all the places where you work. So we understand that all of our customers have multiple sources of data, things like CRM. It might be a purchase list. It might be another data provider that you purchase information from. And we want to show you that you can bring that into LSI. You can enrich it with the data from LinkedIn, and then you can pass that to places like CRM, to Sales Navigator, and then actually export it and use it in other ways. So where I'll start here on the screen then is, this is my Sales Insights homepage. And what I have on this page is I can create a report. It's very simple. I can start and build a list of accounts or companies. What I can also do is I can focus on a specific source of data or account information I have. So I can create a report with a source. Now that might be a connected CRM. In this example, we have Microsoft Dynamics, but equally it could be Salesforce.com. Or what I can do is I can create a report from a list. So we know many of you purchase lists. We know many of you use other data providers. We know many of you maybe don't have a CRM that we can integrate yet with LSI. That's on the way. Lots of cool things in future. but essentially you might have a flat file, an Excel list that you want to import in here. Or it may very well be that a sales leader wants to look at their specific area, their territory, and they can engage with some of this. So you can build an account list from the LinkedIn data from scratch, so white space, or you can actually look at and prioritize on the accounts that matter to you already. Simply below here, I have some recently modified reports, and we'll actually just go through the tabs here rather than taking a long time to navigate. But what we'll see here is that I have my list of reports, and I can build reports, add filters. You can see here that there are multiple people that are working with me in this tool. Typically what we see are the people that are planning and building territories, building data insights, are the people that would come in here. So again, for anyone familiar with Sales Navigator is where we execute, LSI is where we plan. So there will be less people that have these access levels to Sales Insight, and they will come in here and they will probably collaborate and work together. So being able to share some of these reports, copy them, and change over time is really, really important. I know from the poll, people said that they're doing this quarterly. So it's a perfect example of I can come back to my reports that I built last quarter, and then I can see change, I can copy them, I can tweak them based on any changes that the business is dictating for me. But before we go into reports and build a report, let's take a look at some of these things across the top here. So we have sources, personas, and exports. So what do I mean by these? Well, if I jump over here to sources, there are three areas on this page. The first part, I should say, is purchased accounts. And these are account data that I have purchased in LSI. So if we think of Microsoft as an example of a company, if I purchase one credit for Microsoft, then I now have that data day by day for the duration of my contract. And you can see here that in our demo, we have 250,000 records purchased. So that means we have the data for 250,000 companies from the LinkedIn data set, and then we will get that updated information day on day. Now we know that people on LinkedIn, when they change role, they move to new companies, when companies hire new people, typically it's about 5 to 10 days between people changing role and actually updating that on LinkedIn. So the accuracy of the data is really fantastic and really great. And you can see here that I have access to this data from kind of February gone till January 2022. So I can work away on these companies and it will give me information every single day as it updates. Second thing down here then is another source, CRM. So a lot of you will have a CRM in-house, and it might be Dynamics, it might be Salesforce, HubSpot, Oracle, etc., SAP. Today, we have a firm integration with Microsoft Dynamics, but even though we're a Microsoft company, Salesforce is equally on par. So today, LSI can integrate directly with Dynamics and Salesforce. And you can see here in this demonstration, there are 423 accounts in my Dynamics demo, and I can select them and report specifically on these and actually build my reports and then export data. And again, that will push every single day and update as things change in those companies with those people in the real world. And then the last thing is for any company that are using existing data providers, or if you have a CRM that maybe isn't Salesforce or Dynamics, export a list, and then you can upload it to LSI, and we will enrich that data with the data that we get from LinkedIn. So you simply can just append that information together. So these are the typical sources that we talk about. I can select some of these. I can add multiple ones, exclude, etc. as I go when I build my reports. But the last thing that I want to talk about, because we have our sources, we will go and build a report now shortly, but we want to understand in these companies who are the people that I want to engage with. So typically in our world, in LinkedIn and sales solutions here, we look for salespeople. We want to sell Sales Navigator to salespeople. So we would like to define that audience, our total addressable market. Business development, marketing are heavily involved in that. And then for LSI, typically it's people like sales ops, but we know that maybe not every company has sales ops. Sales leaders are always involved. marketing leaders. Sometimes they are the stewards of data in a lot of organizations. So we need to involve all those people. But from my perspective, Doug's perspective, Martin's perspective in LinkedIn, the personas we care about are marketing, sales, business development. And what I can do here is I can create a new persona, or I can select one I have created earlier on. So here's one for IT. And simply what I will do is I will define a function, and I can pick seniorities, and I can pick specific job titles. And today, this is quite rudimentary, the job title. We have an enhancement coming very soon where you will be able to use a much more intuitive area here on job title. I think Dom, when he talks to Martin later on, might touch on some of these things. But typically with sales solutions, we'll bring updates and enhancements every quarter to the product. So you can be confident that we will progress things very quickly as you go. So IT is one example here of persona. I will simply pull in all of the people within this function. We have 26 functions on LinkedIn.com. So when you create a profile, you pick your function, and we will simply report who are all of those people in that function in all of the companies that might matter. Or what I could do is I could select IT leadership, and that will pull in IT function with the seniority director, VP, C-level. And typically we call these the decision-making group, because directors and above can usually make a decision on a purchase or commit to an engagement. So we can build multiple ones. Another example here then would be CFO. So function, finance, C-level, and that will generally capture people that are CFOs, chief financial officers, etc., head of finance. So there are my personas. So if I jump back then to my reports, I could go into any of these other ones and I can update it. But let's jump in here for a second. So on the screen here, what you see is a report, and I've called it Jamie Webinar Example Report. And what I can do is I can change my source. So if I click on sources here, you'll see that I've included my Microsoft Dynamics demonstration environment, which is 423 accounts. But I could actually select exclusions here. So I can pick lists, I can exclude my CRM, or I can just focus on purchased accounts. The other thing I can do is I don't actually have to include any of these. I can just say, show me the entire picture of LinkedIn, all of those 55 million plus companies, because I just want to see what's going on in the total landscape and see if we're missing things. But for now, we'll stick with the 423 accounts here. And once I select Dynamics, we actually get a couple of additional filters here. So I can select account owner and opportunity stage. And these will replicate against the account owners that you have in your CRM, or the opportunity stages as you've described them in your CRM. So it might be Doug Orm Lynch is the account owner. I can focus in on his accounts. Or it could be that Martin has a sales team and we look at Martin's team and all of the people that are in there. Opportunity stages could be anything from existing opportunities with new business, and I can focus on those companies to get more insights. So they are in-flight opportunities for new logos. Or it might be I am in the renewals business. I'm an account manager and I want to focus on show me all of the insights and information I can get against my existing business, so my book of business, either at an individual level by account owner or at a macro level if I'm a leader. So I can narrow down on my CRM pieces here. The company filters are simple drop downs here. So I can look at HQ location, United States, EMEA, APAC. I can put in a specific country here if I want. One thing to note about the entire picture of the information and the data that we have on LinkedIn is that there's a very nice even spread across the globe. So about 25% of our companies and people are in Asia Pacific. About 26% are in North America. We have nearly 30% in EMEA, so Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And then the balance is in smaller regions, but the dominant one, kind of number 4, if you will be South America. So we have a nice even spread across all of these geographies, as Doug showed on the map earlier on. But for now, I'll leave it without a HQ location. I could narrow it down by industry. So what we've done with LSI is we've taken a subtle change from maybe what you're familiar with Sales Navigator. And not only have we listed all of the industries here, but we've actually bucketed them into what we call sectors. So here I can see the software and IT services sector. And I've selected one sector with 4 sub-industries. So I can, at a glance, bring in multiple industries, or I can kind of select and kind of narrow it down. So that is absolutely open opportunity for me. I click save here. And what you'll see down the bottom here is that in real time, my 423 accounts that I've connected to in my CRM has now narrowed down to 224. The other thing I can do then is look at maybe company size, so number of employees. And because of our data set on LinkedIn, we can actually look at growth, because we can see people changing role, moving jobs. We see a lot of hiring information by virtue of the fact that our platform does a lot of hiring activities. Companies post jobs, people are posting their profile, and we connect those people and network them together. So I can use these filters to narrow down. And then the last thing is, after I apply that, I will see a lot of information here. I will go back to personas in a second though. But for now, what you see on my report here is a list of all the companies that are pulled up against these criteria. And what I can see across the top here is I can actually just look at it at a company level, which lists the names. I could look at the locations of these companies, the industries they're in, and it will book it into those industries and where or how many employees they have. You can see here the list of the companies, and as I move across to the right, I can see my opportunity. So how many employees are in this company or in these companies? We can see the number of jobs posted. And the difference here between all employees and employees is if I narrowed it down over here by maybe a location, if I narrowed it down by persona, some of these numbers will change in the middle. On the right-hand side, sales connectivity. So I can see how effective my sales team are using Sales Navigator to engage with these employees. I can benchmark where I think I should be, and maybe we can take action from that with our Sales Navigator users. Now, the other thing I can do is I can narrow down my results into what we call account recommendations. So I have top picks here. And simply a top pick is an account where we are doing well, i.e. we have a very strong relationship and connection with these companies. Now, in my report here, I haven't had any big bet and untapped results, but let me talk to you about what these are. Big bets would be accounts to potentially take a risk on. So these could be accounts that have a large number of employees or personas that matter to me, that maybe I'm not engaging with. And then last of all, untapped growth. These are the accounts that are growing fastest. They could very well be the smallest accounts, maybe the startups, the companies that have had investment. And then I will be able to narrow in on these very quickly. Now, while I have my view here, you'll notice that I have sort filters here. So I can sort by largest, by smallest. If I click on the drop down here, you see that I can look at growth as well. Low to high, high to low, etc. So I can rank things in order that might be useful for me to understand. The last thing I'll do though is I'm going to add in some personas. So you'll see here that this is a list of all my personas, and one I showed earlier was IT, so I'll select that. I also showed IT leadership. I'll select that. And the last of all, CFO. For now, we can select 3 at a time. I would click done. And then what you'll see is we get assigned a particular color, and I can aggregate these and say IT leadership and CFO, these are the numbers of personas in these companies, or I can separate them out and then hit apply. And what you will see is we start to get some additional information layers on my report. And then I can see that Amazon here, if I hover over yellow, which is IT, I can see and click here over time the number of employees that are in IT and what that growth or decline is, and then how many decision makers fall into that bucket of employees. Now you'll remember that I said IT decision makers. So we'll see some of these numbers here, over here in the green area, IT leadership, and we'll start to see growth, tracking, insights, etc. here. And this is very useful for me to narrow in on these personas and really understand, do these companies have the people that fit our value proposition, that we sell our solutions to, that we want to engage with to grow our footprint, our share of wallet in these companies? That's really useful for two reasons. Because one, I can go over here and bring in an additional layer of information on Sales Navigator activity. So how many employees have been researched by my Sales Navigator users, how many have been contacted, how many have been engaged with email messages, etc. I can bring this additional layer in. And then you can see over here that of the 220 companies, I'm only reaching 185 of them through Sales Navigator. So I'd want to work into that. What is my sales execution? How am I working with my sales managers, my sales leaders to focus on these accounts that matter? Because they may very well have a very large size of prize that I'm trying to address here. Now, the last thing that I want to touch on is the fact that we can actually export this data to multiple locations. So first of all, I can click export here, and I can bring this down to a CSV. So if I imported a list from another data provider and I appended the information to that list with LinkedIn Sales Insights, I'll be able to download that and then use that and manage it in my process. I can actually push this to CRM directly, which we'll show you next. But the other thing I can do is I can send this to Sales Navigator. So if I have a leader, so in Doug's world, it's Declan, and I might say, hey, Declan, here is the list of accounts that I need you and your team to actually actively execute over the next quarter, year, financial year, etc. And all of this information will be sent over to Declan, to Sales Navigator, and then he can start working on with his team, engaging with these personas, and we'll start to see an uptick in the numbers here. And once I actually purchase these 220 credits, over time, I can save this report and I can track and see how we're increasing our engagement with these companies. And it's as simple as clicking Sales Navigator, and then what I can do is I can type in a person's name and I send that directly to them in Sales Navigator in real time. The other thing I can do is if I connect to my CRM, and let me bring up a slightly different window here. So here we have Salesforce, so an alternative to Dynamics that we talked about earlier on. We have a company called LinkedIn. I'm not logged into Sales Navigator because I didn't want to take your eye away from the important thing today, which would be Sales Insights. So we can scroll down here and we can look at LinkedIn Sales Insights information. So on the company profile, we will add in information directly to your CRM, Dynamics or Salesforce, and we will keep that up to date, day on day. And you actually have the ability to control if it happens day on day or not. So we can see the global employee count, the growth, what the LinkedIn ID is, and a link to their LinkedIn company page. And then down here, we can see our persona information. So if one of my personas is CTO, it will show me the employee count, growth, infrastructure engineer decision makers here, employee count and growth, and then over here, software engineers. On LinkedIn, we have quite a lot of software engineers, but it actually has declined slightly over the period that we've been running this. So it might be 30 days, it might be over 90 a year, etc. And I can actually write all of this information into my CRM. And then I know there are a lot of marketers on the call here. So if you're doing smart things in your world, like maybe triggering campaigns based on CRM data, you're doing account-based marketing, or it might be that we want to notify the person that owns the LinkedIn account. Hey, Doug, you're the account manager for LinkedIn. Did you know that there's been a change in software engineers? Maybe they're the persona that matters. So we can do very smart things to do account-based marketing and give you insights and push it directly to your CRM. Just two more examples, very similar. It will go across our entire organization. So we have Amazon here. similar company in the same CRM, and then we have these personas listed against these this account as well. And then last of all, we have Microsoft here. So I can pass up to 3 personas at a time to the CRM, and I can keep them up to date, day on day, and we can take triggered actions from there. So I'm going to stop there, and we will start to pass into any Q&A on what I've covered there, and then we'll move over to Martin and Dominic to close out our session. So 2 questions I see in here so far. So thank you, Steve, for your question. How does this compete, overlap with Zoom Info? We use the 2 in concert today. So I'm going to focus on the word concert there, because sometimes it feels like you're trying to coordinate everything from a planning perspective. So we absolutely understand that each and every one of our customers is different. They have many data providers. They have many sales and marketing technologies built into their stack. So we do see a lot of our customers actually using Zoom Info on a daily basis, not only in relation to the sales insights, the planning area, but also in conjunction with our Sales Navigator tools. There's actually an integration there. Typically, when we're talking to customers about Zoom Info or any of the other tools out there that are in this competitive space, there are some customers that will say, well, I actually want to use both, because there's certain data points that I want to bring together to give me a holistic view of the world. What we focus on, and what we are really good and strong at in LinkedIn Sales Insights, is the up-to-date nature of the data. So we have a large data set, those 750 million people, those 55 million companies. We have a broad coverage across all of the countries in the world. And it is the people-powered members that we are always focused on as being really important to us, that actually power this data. So personas, number of employees, etc. But rather than go into a little bit more information, would love to have a further conversation. Do reach out to your relationship manager and we can give you more information. And then the last question in the chat, though I do see a Q&A, Bryman asked, can you only build personas using those 3 fields? So for now, Bryman, absolutely, but we will be enhancing with an additional area this quarter that will bring a couple of further functionalities and tweaks to the descriptions of the people, of the personas that you're trying to look at. And then lastly, we'll just look at the Q&A. So Katie, may I ask how the personas in LSI differ from creating a lead list in Sales Navigator? That's a fantastic question, Katie. So think of, in Sales Insights, we're doing planning, and in Sales Navigator, we're executing. So we would coordinate sales, marketing, operations, sales ops leadership to focus on the right companies within LSI. And then once we complete that body of work, we would pass that information to the Sales Navigator users, and they will specifically look for the people that fall into those personas and start engagement with connection, in-mail, messages, warm introductions, etc. So think of LSI as focusing on the companies, and then we pass that over for execution to the sales team with Sales Nav, and then they find those same people and then they engage with them on mass, on scale. So thank you for all the questions so far. If I've missed anything, we'll try and cover it at the end, but I will pass to Martin so that he can take us from here with Dominic. So over to you, Martin and Dominic. Welcome to the call, Dominic.
Hello.
Thanks, Jamie. That was can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Good stuff. Good stuff. Look, thanks for that. It was a great overview of Sales Insights. And Dom, do you want to pop on your camera?
I can't.
Okay?
It's not
It's not working. Okay.
It's saying the host has stopped it.
Okay, maybe the host could let us see you. Okay, maybe
Hey,
that
there
works
we go.
now. There he is. So it is a real person behind that screen. Good to see you, Dom. No, thanks for that, Jamie. That was really good. And hopefully that gave people in the audience a good sense of what this solution can actually do. But afternoon, I'm probably, if I just introduce myself very briefly, you've heard my name already. Martin Brennan is my name. I work in the customer success team here in LinkedIn. and I'm dedicated to our LSI customers across EMEA. So hopefully there's one or two of you in this audience today. But essentially I work with customers to, as I see it, try and I always think when you make investments, you've made a promise to somebody, probably senior to yourself, who has provided you with money for you to deliver on a project or as something, an improvement to the business. My role is to come in and try and help you come good on that promise. And that's something that I've been working with today's guest, who is Dominic Macias, Sales Ops Exec at Kallidus. Dom, you are very welcome.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here.
Absolutely, no problem at all. We're delighted to have you. So thanks for joining. I'm really excited, Dom, in this kind of next section where you and I can have a chat. I'm really excited about how you've been able to work with LSI or LinkedIn Sales Insights over the past short enough while, to be fair, but to generate value for your company. So maybe to kick it off, you could help set the scene by sharing with us a little bit about Kallidus, what it is you guys do, and what you do in your role within the company.
Yeah, sure. So Kallidus is a full HR and talent management solution that supports the entire employee lifecycle. So we accelerate your productivity, drive employee engagement, and then nurture your learning culture. So starting at the very beginning, we help you attract and hire the right talent through the use of our ATS. We onboard them quickly through our onboarding tool into our HRIS, and that acts as that central hub for your people data, policies, processes. And then given that your employees then need to be upskilled, we do that through our learning management system and e-learning content. And then to top it off, because we know that companies need to evidence the impact and ROI of employees, what we then use is a forward-facing performance management solution just to ensure that employee objectives are aligned with those organizations' goals. Now, my role in particular is sales operations, and with that on a day-to-day basis, I'm focused on analysis of our internal business processes, the identification of our pain points that can hinder a growing organization, or any for that matter, and then iterating on the back of current processes to optimize them, or in many cases, introduce new processes and integrations, which can streamline the day-to-day lives of our salespeople. And then finally, there's that revenue side of my job, which involves working closely with our sales leaders to identify those next steps that we should be taking to accelerate the growth of our company.
Brilliant. So that's a real vast breadth of areas that you cover. So you get to see a lot of the business, right? You get to see a lot of what really makes things tick, I guess. And you have a lot of, I mean, you guys cover a lot of industries, right? You're not just specific to any kind of niche part of the world. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. We, in terms of where we generally operate, you're probably talking around the mid-market region, and then it just spans across the majority of our LinkedIn industries, if I'm honest with you. There are certain industries that fit our ICP more than others, but yeah, no, to be honest, everyone needs a learning management system at some point.
Quick plug. Good man. Well done. Okay, is that really interesting? So that's good sort of backdrop to what you guys are about. So you talked about, I'm not sure if you quite use the word transforming, but certainly changing, updating, modernizing processes. Can you tell us a little bit about what was your sales planning process like, sort of back in the olden days, as my daughter refers to me, but back in the days before LSI, how did you approach sales planning?
Yeah, so I mean, you obviously saw what Jamie was showing you guys. We essentially did exactly the same thing, only fully manual. And when I say we, it was actually our head of business development at the time, and that was his responsibility. So you can imagine it, just painstakingly spending all those evenings on Sales Navigator, identifying those accounts that we believed matched our ICP, and I think emphasis there on the believed part, and then building it all out in Excel. So then having a workbook, multiple sheets that just made it more and more complex the more you plug data into it. You can probably imagine, because it was Chris, our head of business development, doing it, that just the amount of time spent on it and just how confusing it got, it just made life miserable for him when it came to that. And then really just had that fun task of manually assigning out all of those specific sectors, those specific accounts to individuals, where you then had to be incredibly careful to not duplicate your efforts by accident, give two SDRs exactly the same industries or exactly the same accounts, which would cause issues in the long run.
Heaven forbid you give two salespeople the one account to chase after.
Oh, it happens, doesn't it?
They're not competitive enough, right? Okay. Yeah. And what strikes me then is that all of the you use lots of words like pain and suffering, perhaps in all that process. It's that strikes me. Your business development leader is doing the grind, the hard work and grind of trying to pull all that information together, rather than actually using that skilled individual resource, evaluating or analyzing that data and then taking action on it. Is that part of the pain that drove you into this position?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's because as our organization is going through hyper growth, we not only did we need a tool to be able to facilitate that from a forecasting perspective, so we could actually strategically plan the next FY, but we needed more people to be able to do it at the same time. You can always work from an Excel workbook, but it's still a manual task, whereas we needed a tool where two people could be on it. We could be both doing the same work, but not duplicating our efforts. So that way you essentially half the time, or you focus more. And
that's brilliant. Sorry. So maybe even just as an apples for apples kind of scenario, I don't know if you're able to do this, but if you took, how long did it take back in that manual, painful world to now, when you're doing some of that similar work in Sales Insights, what would you see as a kind of a change in time, or what's the benefit, I guess?
Yeah, sure. So the time is actually the same as before, but the main difference here is that we're now able to accelerate the analytic side of things, and now we're able to own in more on what we are classifying as, say, a tier 1 account, a tier 2 account, a tier 3 account, and then just really take a deeper dive into that data so we can correctly or better use science to allocate those accounts effectively.
So we're moving from, based on what you're saying there, are we moving just from, okay, instead of duplicating the same account to multiple reps, now we're pushing accounts to the right reps, but with much more targeting?
Yes, that's absolutely
because
right.
You're using the data to drive better chance of closing deals.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. That is exactly right. Initially, before LSI, we didn't really even have the data. It's patchy. Everyone using a CRM who's maybe an admin knows that data in a CRM can get out of date incredibly quickly. You barely you need to blink. Where now with LSI, we're in a completely different position where we can trust the data in front of us and make informed decisions without even batting an eyelid.
Okay, that's powerful stuff. Okay, so maybe just taking that on a step then from there, I kind of ask you, the question, why did you buy LSI? But you've kind of given us some really good sense there of what you wanted to achieve with it, right? So, or what you have been achieving with it. But what drove you to go with LSI over other providers that are out in the market? And I'm kind of thinking, I know, look, without sort of picking on anyone in particular, but I think Steve had another question there in the chat that was just saying, does this replace the likes of Zoom Info? Like what made you choose LSI over other providers, I guess?
Sure. So for me, it was two things really. I guess the first was that seamless integration. We use Sales Nav Enterprise. We knew about LSI, and I guess for me, I'm a massive fan of those integrations. So having something such as Sales Nav and LSI integrated together, it just meant that we had the ability to communicate what we're doing in LSI with what we then hand over to SDRs in Sales Navigator. And it also meant that, just like Jamie was illustrating, you have the ability to not micromanage, but you have the ability to look at whether or not the SDRs are getting in touch, whether or not there are those multiple touch points, i.e. connections or in-mails or whatever, directly in the LSI platform. For us, that was sort of a key thing, because it's not just data, it's how you use it. And for us, it was a useful way that we could get into the platform, identify what we might need to do, where we need to give a nudge, and then just get back to working on what else we need to do.
Yeah, that resonates with me. And I know, like, I've worked in sales in previous organizations. Being able to tie your activity to outcome and maybe correlating those two things is vital, right? So if you're a sales leader, you expect that the more engagement we have with an organization and we multi-thread across that, the better outcome we're expecting to get, or the better chance of an outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just really difficult as well. Sales leaders always want more data and more data, but it is how you use that data. And I guess that integration meant that we could use it, and we could use it really well. But then I guess there was also another part to why we chose LSI over another one. And I guess it all comes down to, I guess LSI is that strategic planning tool. And for us, we could only compare it to a few competitors. We did compare it with the likes of Crunchbase and ZoomInfo. Now, those platforms, they definitely do have their merits. For how I use the platforms, they lied more so in the financial side of data, be it reported revenue, your year ends, departmental budgets. And that data is definitely important to us. But the problem we had was that we hadn't been able to standardize on even the basic set of data, i.e. industries, company sizes. So my thought originally was to just standardize on LinkedIn completely. And then if LSI couldn't develop certain features or it wasn't part of their roadmap, we would then look at a supplementary tool to help get that additional information, whether it was those financial year ends or any of the financial data.
So there's probably a good example for the audience whereby, I can't remember now exactly, but the question of working in concert, or, does it replace? A bit of both, really, isn't it? By the sounds of your experience.
Yeah, it's a bit of, sorry.
Go on. No, go on.
I was going to say, it definitely is a bit of both. I think for us with ZoomInfo, we do look at the financial side of things. There is a lot of data when you hop on to ZoomInfo, but the way I sort of saw it was LinkedIn, it's a virtual CV, isn't it? You log in, you get the latest data, you know immediately what's going on. And then it was just a case of those industries we want to standardize, because so many different providers have so many different industries, and it can really confuse things.
Yeah, and especially as you go across different countries and different nuanced data sets. Okay, just to maybe bring us onto the home straight, a couple of other questions in my mind. Might touch a little bit on this already, but how would you, if you were to summarize, how have you improved your sales planning processes today, having brought LinkedIn Sales Insights into the fold? You talked a little bit about being able to work, take away some of that manual work, working a bit at scale. How would you summarize all of that?
Yeah, sure. So for me, it comes down to 3 points in particular. The first is from that productivity perspective. So I mentioned earlier on, it was incredibly manual before, staring at cells on a screen, hours on end. Whereas now, what we're able to do is hop into LSI, create those reports. We're able to then still use Excel to build out that meaningful data, but we're able to observe more fine sets of data. So let's say, for example, I wanted to see accounts growing within a particular range or company size, or I want to see employee growth size, and I want to be able to model that within a particular set of industries. It's just incredibly simple now. So from that productivity perspective, we've just cut down time completely. And then from that efficiency perspective, that was the second point. I guess the problem that we have as an organization, or at least what we did have is, and I think you get this in a lot of organizations, salespeople will have their own opinions on where they think they are winning best. So they'll be going, okay, I think this is a great industry, or you've said that these industries fall within tier 1, but I know we're winning here. And I guess the problem with that is that verbal communication just really slows things down. It complicates things a lot. Whereas now with LSI, because we've integrated completely with Salesforce, which is the CRM we use, we're able to purchase those customers that we already have. Likewise, maybe opportunities we haven't won over the last 24 months, and then continually monitor it. So in Salesforce, I can build out dashboards which look at trends over time for our particular products or type of revenue that we're bringing in. So I guess what you could say is that since bringing in LSI, we've iterated our process to such an extent that we've now introduced a science to selling. And then the final point, I guess, would be just more, overlapping that CRM data. For me, that was essential. Being able to match those accounts to those on LinkedIn and on a daily basis get the most up-to-date metrics associated with that account. It's just something that I think is unrivaled from all the work we did in choosing a provider. I guess the big challenge is consistency of that data and how manual you want data entry to be. I know that for me, I want to get salespeople to do as little admin as possible, and I want the tools I use to be able to automate as much as possible. I know that prior to LSI, on an account by account basis, we had to look at sales nav, then look at the industry and size, and then in a Salesforce field, add it, and then do it again.
Okay, yeah.
And it's just not scalable, especially when you start getting thousands of customers. You can't do that. You can't allocate a single person to it.
Yeah, and you can't rely either, right, on the what mood was the sales rep in when he was putting that information in? He's tired, busy day.
Yeah,
all that stuff. Yeah,
that's absolutely right. Whereas now I've just purchased the accounts, I'm able to export that data into a CSV format if I want to, and then import it into Salesforce, or just immediately push it over and then report on it in the CRM, and then it's always up to date.
Do you know, a couple of words that stick out to me there, Dom, and what you're saying, productivity, efficiency, prioritization. I think there were the three you called out. I don't think there's a business in operation that doesn't consider things like that to help sell more or reduce costs. So really impacting the bottom line, which is encouraging to hear. Okay, just maybe to wrap it up then. Where next? Where are you going next? What if you think, I guess, over the next sort of like 3 to 6 months, you've achieved what you've achieved. What do you aspire to get? Where do you aspire to get to next?
So for us, what we're going to be doing is reviewing those opportunity generation numbers every quarter from the perspective of LSI data. And then likewise, we'll be observing close rate changes, sales cycle durations, just to see what trends we observe. Now, what we want to see, and I think it's the same for any organization, is those shorter sales cycles, those higher close rates. But given that we are putting so much effort into the science of selling, I'm fairly confident that the trends that we want to see are going to be the ones that end up appearing.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so exciting times ahead. Looks like it's science of selling. Right? That's impressive. All these sales artists out there will be probably throwing things at the screen, but I'm with you on this one. Look, Dom, absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and your openness in what you have shared. It really, I know, in my experience, being able to have these kind of conversations are like real golden nuggets for people when they're trying to make decisions on how they should move their business forward in these particular areas. So real big thank you to you for taking the time and sharing this with the audience today. Thank you.
It's no problem at all.
Indeed. So Doug, over to you. I'm not sure if there are any other further, or even do we have time for any further questions? But over to you, Doug.
Yeah, James, you would just let me put my camera back on there. Yeah, so first of all, thank you very much, John. That was fantastic, hugely insightful, and great to see you and the team at Kallidus getting so much value out of LSI. And I think you've definitely added lots of nuggets of insights there for anyone who's on the call or watching this at a later date. We ran a little bit over, but that's okay. What I would always suggest is, if you're interested in getting more an individual call, please reach out to your relationship manager. And if we haven't answered any questions today, please feel free to surface them to us. But I think overall it was a hugely beneficial call. And thank you very much, Dom. And we really appreciate your attendance and your engagement. So that's pretty much it, guys. Have a great afternoon. And we'll be sharing this recording with our wider team, and hopefully make its way back to you.
Thank you for your time, everyone. Thanks, Dominic.
No problem. Thank you.
Thanks, folks. Bye.
Bye-bye.